and led the EU crisis response team leader some years ago in Ukraine. Henry, very good morning to you. So you are uniquely qualified to talk about this issue, which has been exercising world leaders, Western leaders, in the last week. And clearly Germany's, I mean, their ability to prevent other nations from exporting their own arms, just explain how this authorization process works.
Yeah, I should say it's not only Germany. So, for example, Denmark and Sweden have both had sort of constitutional issues, if you like, that go back to World War II. Sweden produces extremely good offshore patrol boats, attack boats, the sort of what we might call torpedo boats, but doesn't export them because they're prevented by Swedish law from doing so. The Germans, after World War II and sort of the history there, have a similar thing. So Germany has built into its arms exports conditionality that for the customer. So, for example, Poland has bought the Leopard 2 tank, that you can't sell it on without the authorization of the German government to do so. So it's a sort of historical sort of shadow of World War II.
But they're must be coming under serious pressure now. You've got 15 other countries that want to send those Leopard tanks to help the Ukrainians that Germany is preventing. And because Germany's worried that if they allow it, then Russia will turn off even more gas than
I think there's more to it than that, Richard. I mean, it's sort of not talking just about the technicality of tanks, and I would say that the Challenger 2 tank, the British tank, is the big bad boy of NATO tanks.
Which is a British tank.
It's the British tank. It's the 14 of them that are going. It's the most heavily armoured. It's certainly the sort of the toughest of the lot. Not necessarily the fastest and most agile, but that's not necessarily what the Ukrainians wanted, and it could be a seriously dangerous opponent for the Russian forces. But Germany's relationship with Russia goes back a long time. Gerhard Schroeder, when he was Chancellor, was very much the facilitator of the rise of Putin, and the German bank, Deutsche Bundesbank, was fundamental in, shall we say, Putin's ability to accrue the wealth that he later built his political network on. Gerhard Schroeder now is the chairman of Nord Stream, the Russian company that... So
there's close links to between certain people in Germany and Russia, but the international pressure growing on Germany is really significant, and yet they've resisted. How long is that sustainable?
It's a difficult question, Richard. I hope not very long. Poland is ready to send these vehicles. Finland as well. They would be a game changer. One of the problems with the Ukraine war is that it is starting to settle into a stalemate. Over this winter, you've mentioned the trench warfare, and that will just simply perpetuate the war. We will then get both sides trying to use increasingly desperate measures. We will see increasing suffering, and it could go on for many years.
But some people are saying that if you send tanks, that's an even more provocative act against the Russians that may result in a more an even worse reaction from Putin and his cronies. What's the difference between sending tanks, which obviously are deadly, and all the HIMARS missile systems, which have been very effective already?
Well, tanks can be used offensively, particularly the Leopard 2. It is an aggressive vehicle. It was designed to be such. Challenger is more a defensive vehicle, a defensive tank. But what I would say to people who present that argument is this isn't the first time Putin has done it. He did it in Georgia in 2008, following exactly the same storybook. There was a civil war in two areas of Georgia in the late 90s. That was then developed by him to create autonomous regions that then he used as an excuse to go in militarily with an invasion to secure and annex those two areas of Georgia. He's done exactly the same thing with a few modifications in Ukraine. He is trying to redraw the map of Europe. It is no different, in my books, to Hitler's invasion of Poland. That is what Putin has attempted to do in Ukraine. He has so far found it very difficult to achieve.
Now, there's also an interesting suggestion, because we've offered 14 Challenger tanks. Now, 14 doesn't sound very many, but they're obviously a very, very effective tank.
Yeah.
I did also read that Jordan has just mothballed 400 Challenger 1 tanks. I'm not sure which tanks that you were in. Were you in the one?
I was in the one.
You were in the one.
The two is
and there was an article in the Telegraph suggesting that actually what we should do is buy those from Jordan or get Jordan and use those and send the Challenger 1s. But other people say that 14 Challenger 2s are more effective than 400 Challenger 1s. I mean, it's a hard debate to get your head round. But what do you think to that idea?
It is. I mean, I would agree that it is an option. The problem for the UK is that we do not want, and frankly, sort of militarily, diplomatically, or financially, we do not want to be the only country doing this. Now, there are issues of compatibility and so on, and the logistical tail, because tanks require a massive, it's rather like a fighter plane, it needs massive logistics behind it. There's a great operation, a huge operation behind putting one tank in the battlefield. But that's the issue. We could do that, and there's also a time issue. Ukraine needs these now, coming into the spring. Even before that, because if they have, at the moment, the weather in Ukraine is not as cold as normal.
Yeah.
It can go down to the minus 20s, 30s easily in some parts. And then the ground goes solid, and then you can use these vehicles. At the moment, they can't.
So how quickly can we send our 14 Challenger 2 tanks, for
You're
example?
talking probably a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks to train the crews. Then we've got to ship them over there, put in place the logistical tail to support them.
That's months.
We're talking 3 months probably.
3
before
months
they
from
can be
now,
effective.
because it's very easy. You hear this talk and then you think, well, it's going to get there quickly, but actually, there's a serious logistical effort behind it.
There is,
and that 3 months, then the weather's changing, and it seems like Germany, meanwhile, is wanting to talk ever more and delay a decision.
Germany. Richard, I think you know I was in Brussels for 3 years as a chief planner for Common Security and Defence Policy. One of the things I was responsible for was Ukraine, and in 2014-15 I was the lead planner for Ukraine. I spent 5 months there working with the Ukrainians. The Germany blocked or as much as they could, watered down any decisive decision by the European Union that might irritate the Russians. Had the European Union not had that German blockage on many issues to do with Ukraine, I sincerely believe, and I can't prove it, of course, it's my opinion having been in that job, I believe that Putin would not have invaded Ukraine. Germany has been appeasing, this is a blunt statement, but it's based on my direct experience sitting in the room with the 20 ambassadors, including the German ambassador, whilst he's on the phone to Steinmeier.
You think that Germany essentially...
Germany has appeased Russia for decades, and it's continuing to do so because it's got financial ties to Russia, it's got energy ties to Russia, and it's dependent, really, in many respects, on Russia.
Which is incredibly foolish.
It is.